This beef stew recipe is one of those recipes that you go to on a cold winter's day. It's actually summer in Australia right now, but it's actually perfect any time of the year. It's super easy to make, it's cheap and delicious, and most of the ingredients you should already have in your kitchen, or some dried spices or herbs, stuff like that, but it's all easy to get. Let's get straight into it. Please sit back, relax, and enjoy. Alright, starting out, we're going to need 2 brown or yellow onions. These are on the medium size, and we can remove both the tip and root. Slice it in half through the center, and then we can peel off those annoying skins, and with any of the scraps you can save these for a stock. Once they are peeled, slice each half into quarters, rotate at 90 degrees, and dice into large pieces. Next, we're going to need 6 shallots, or shallots, depending on how you like to pronounce it, and these are optional, you don't have to use them, but they add fantastic sweetness to a dish. We can remove the tip, leaving the root intact, slice them in half, and then all we have to do is peel them, and we're going to use these as they are like this. For a recipe like this, we definitely need garlic. This is 6 cloves of freshly peeled garlic right here. Use the side of a knife to push down and crush. This will activate the allicin compound, which is what gives garlic its strong flavor. And then we can just give these a rough chop. Doesn't need to be super fine, and it doesn't need to be super thick, just in the middle if you can. Now, I'm personally using fresh oregano. This is 7 grams worth. You can use dried, and I'll leave details about that in the description. But if you're using fresh, scrunch it up into a tight bunch to make it easier to work with, and then just give it a rough chop. Just make sure there's no woody stems. If there is, just pick the leaves off. But if it's a little bit softer like this, you can just give it a rough chop with the stems included. Last but not least, we also need 1.5 kilos of chuck beef, and this is large diced. When you're ready to cook, place a large pan or pot over a medium-high heat, add in 30 milliliters of olive oil, and once that's nice and hot, we can then add in that chuck beef. Do it in batches though, otherwise you'll overcrowd the pan and it will start steaming and won't get the colour that we want. Season to taste with salt, and then we're going to cook this for about 5 minutes, 2.5 minutes on each side, and we just want to brown this off slightly. Doesn't have to be completely brown, as you can see here, but once it does have a nice little golden colour all over it, we can then remove this and place it onto a plate and just set it aside for the time being. After that, just repeat with the other batch, and you don't need to see me do that. Now into the same pan, add in those chopped onions as well as the halved and peeled shallots. We can then saute this for about 3 minutes, mixing it around regularly. This will pick up all of that beef flavour that was left behind and start to get a nice charring on it. If it does happen to get a little bit dry, I just recommend adding in a splash more oil. That way it will help saute all of this really well. Also a trick of the trade, if it does happen to get a little bit dark on the bottom of the pan, you can also add a splash of water. After 3 minutes, we can then add in that chopped garlic, and we're going to saute this for only 45 seconds, mixing it around the whole time. This is very important as we don't want to burn the garlic, because burnt garlic can literally ruin the whole dish. To create a nice earthy warm flavour, add in 4 grams of ground cumin, and then we're also going to add in 130 grams of tomato paste to increase the depth, and this is going to create a beautiful sweet and delicious tangy flavour. With that in, just mix this around, and we're going to cook this for 1 minute, stirring it regularly. Like I said, if the pan does get a little bit dark, you can just add a splash of water, but we are going to be reducing it anyway and deglazing the pan with 160 milliliters of dry red wine. If you can't consume alcohol, you can use beef stock or chicken stock instead. Let that boil away for 30 seconds untouched to deglaze the pan and reduce, and then we can add in 60 milliliters of red wine vinegar for a nice acidic touch. 550 milliliters of chicken stock or beef stock, or even water if you wanted to. Seasoning to taste with sea salt flakes and cracked black pepper. 30 cracks worth. Let's then give this a good mix around with a wooden spoon or spatula, just for those flavors to become friends. We're going to cook this for about 3 minutes, and in that time, we want to bring it to a simmer or a very light boil. Once that's done, reintroduce the beef. Just make sure you don't spill all the resting juices over your stovetop like I did here. And we do want to add those resting juices into the sauce. Follow that up with 2 whole cinnamon sticks. This is for a nice earthy sweetness and warmth. 10 whole cloves for even more earthy warmth. And then 4 whole dried bay leaves for a nice piney infusion. Give this a really gentle mix through, and we're going to bring this to a boil in the process. And then we're going to reduce the heat to low, place on a lid, and then just let this cook away for about an hour, untouched completely. Okay, so now after an hour, carefully remove the lid, just be careful of any escaping steam, and then we're going to freshen it up with that chopped oregano for a nice minty freshness and a slight little herbaceous flavour. And I'm also going to add in 90 grams of currants. Before you say you lost me at currants, you don't have to use these at all. If you want to add a little bit of sweetness to this, I do recommend adding them in. Give this a gentle mix through to keep developing those flavors. Be gentle with it though, because the beef and onions will be quite soft at this point. And then we can check it for seasoning, adjusting if necessary. If you did add any seasoning, just give it another stir through before allowing it to sit over a low heat for another hour to completely soften up. Alright, so this has now been 2 hours in total, 1 hour with the lid on and 1 hour with the lid off, and you can see that this is greatly reduced and that colour is spectacular. We can then remove it from the stovetop and just remove those bay leaves before serving it up. Now I am serving this with mash, I know I didn't show this, but you can serve this with all sorts of different things, which I'll leave details about in the description. But with whatever you're serving this with, just place down all of that delicious soft tender meat, making sure you get loads of sauce and all of the onions all over, and you can then also drizzle around some of that reduced glaze all over the top. I am going to garnish this with a little bit of fresh oregano, it is completely optional, and cracked black pepper. But with all of that done, we are then left with this beautiful Greek style beef stew that looks and smells absolutely incredible. The only thing that is left to do is, of course, we can then dig in. If you like stew, then you have to have this because that's absolutely perfect. The meat literally melts in your mouth. There's so much flavor in the sauce. It's really well reduced as well, obviously intensifying that flavor. There's a little bit of earthy warmth from the cinnamon, the cumin, and those cloves. Obviously, we've added a few currants in there for a little bit of sweetness. If you don't like that, obviously you don't have to use it. You can also add a whole lot of different things to this type of recipe as well. I'll leave a few little ideas in the description for you. But other than that, please do make this recipe. It tastes absolutely fantastic. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button. It really does help me out, and consider subscribing, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.